About the debt ceiling is Democratic Senator Shaheen of New Hampshire. And Senator, you just heard what Speaker Boehner had to say yesterday. We've been trying to figure out if there is actually a roadmap at this point to get to some agreement that can pass both houses of Congress. What do you think?
Well, I think the time is running out. We have until Tuesday. It's time to get this done. You know, we're hearing from a lot of our constituents in New Hampshire who say that they want to see action in Congress and they want to see a compromise. Our founding fathers built this country on the notion that there should be checks and balances among the branches and there should be compromise to get things done. And we are at that point where we need to compromise.
The debt on arrival, though, is what has been said about Boehner's plan. Even if it passes the House, which is questionable at this point, that its arrival at the Senate, it will be dead. So how do you find the compromise there?
Well, unfortunately, what we've heard from the plan coming from the House Republican leadership is that it would be a short-term response to raising the debt ceiling. I'm concerned, I'm sure you all are, about what that might mean for a downgrade in the country's bond rating. You know, as a former governor, I appreciate that you don't mess around with the full faith and credit of the state, that we need to keep our AAA bond rating. That's what's in the best interest of business in the country and of families who are dealing with credit cards and mortgage payments and car payments. We don't want interest rates to increase. We don't want the economy to go back into a recession. So it's important for us to come to an agreement. On the Senate side, Democrats have said we're willing to go along with the plan that has cuts and no revenue increases. I think we need to look at revenue, but I'm willing to say the most important thing for us to do is to raise the debt ceiling, to get it done, to provide some certainty so we can get businesses off the sidelines and start investing again.
Senator Ken Langone, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I can't hear you very well. So
all right,
maybe...
I'm sorry. I'll try and speak up a little louder. I have a question. First of all, I can assure you of one thing. Eventually, interest rates will go up. The rates right now are totally unrealistic and not sustainable at these levels. They have to go up, and they should go up. That said, we've got a bigger issue here, and that is, what do we do to get our house in order, because the deficit cannot be sustained forever, year after, and we're there. We're getting there. I think a lot of the stress that all of you are going through right now is how do you deal with this enormous number that frankly is out of control. I'll throw on the table the fact that people like me should pay more taxes. In fact, I would argue that income, earned income, as opposed to income off investments, should be taxed lower, and therefore dividends and interest income and passive income, so to speak, should be taxed higher. It's the other way right now. But where do we get the leadership among all of you elected officials to do what we have to do to get this country righted?
Well, as you indicate, we have a two-part problem. In the short term, we need to raise the debt ceiling so we avoid the dire consequences of failure to do that. But in the long term, we do have to deal with our debt and deficits in this country. I think we need to do it in a way that minimizes the impact on the economy, because in the long term, the best thing we can do to deal with the debt and deficits is start creating jobs again, get people working, and get this economy moving. I have supported an approach that came from what's called the Gang of Six, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans in the Senate who've been working since January, have taken what was done by the President's Deficit Commission, the Simpson-Bowles Commission back in December, and their approach looks at discretionary spending, at mandatory spending, at defense, and at revenues for the exact reason that you talked about.
Senator, I'm sorry.
That we can't get to the savings we need, the $4 trillion in savings over the next 10 years, without looking at all those aspects of the federal government's operations.
Senator, I can assure you that all the regulation that's come out of Washington in the last few years is impeding the creation of jobs.
I agree with you on that. I think we do need to look at regulation. But that's a longer term challenge as well.
I'm sorry, ma'am. The longer term begins with the short term. You don't get to the long term if you don't get through the short term. We have stores.
Right.
Home Depot has stores in New Hampshire, and thank God New Hampshire loves us and we do well up there. Think of the number of jobs that have been created by Home Depot, not just in our stores, but in the vendors and the suppliers and the people that depend on Home Depot as its customer. I can guarantee you that Home Depot today could not be founded because of the regulations that are in existence. That's 325,000 jobs just in our store.
Listen,
So,
I'm on your side on
well,
that. I think we need to create jobs. But the fact is, we're not going to deal with the regulations between now and Tuesday.
No.
And what we need to do is to raise the debt ceiling and look at some of these issues that are impeding the ability of business to grow and add employees.
Senator,
let's say that Sunday or that Saturday or over the weekend, Senator Reid's plan is the one that passes in the Senate, and let's say Boehner's does not pass. But then you're going to have to come back to these House Republicans. A lot of people at this point, you've heard it say, oh, winding down the Afghanistan war, that's not a real spending cut. Some of the other stuff is tricked up and not real. Is there any tolerance in the Democrats in the Senate to add more spending cuts might get some of these House Republicans on board with the Reid plan? Will anyone go even further, even though there's no revenue increase? You already feel like you're giving a lot. Is there any way to come back and actually have it pass the House?
Well, the Reid proposal is not my first choice because I agree that we need to look at revenues. But I also appreciate that we need to get this done by Tuesday. And you're talking about the cost of winding down the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that $1 trillion. That's $1 trillion that's already been voted on by 40 members, 40 Republicans in the Senate, and by the House Republicans in the Ryan proposal on the budget. So they thought that was real money at the time they voted on it. So it seems to me that putting it in the plan now, the Congressional Budget Office has said that's real money. So I think that's a real amount, and we ought to be able to use that.
Senator, where are you on entitlement cuts, though? One of the interesting things that came up this morning, Ken Langone volunteered that he'd actually, be happy to pay higher taxes and be happy to means test Social Security.
As long as we reduce the deficit with that money.
Right. We'll add that to the sentence.
Well, as I said, I think we've got to look at all aspects of the budget, and that includes mandatory programs. I voted to look at Medicare, and when I voted for the health care reform plan, that proposed making significant changes in the cost of the Medicare program. So I think we've got to look at that. But I do think we need to keep in place the safety net for Social Security and for Medicare for people who need it. And one of the things that I think is good about Harry Reid's proposal is that it does that. And it gives us time. I mean, one of the things that I think you all have pointed out is that some of these challenges require very thoughtful approaches. They require people sitting down together and really looking at the implications of what we're doing. And we're not going to do that between now and Tuesday.
All right. Senator, all right, we'll see. We're all, you know that. We're all watching anyway. Thanks for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up,
Go ahead.
Coming up, Ken Langone reacts. See, that's why we're getting out, so we're going to talk to you exclusively. Ken Langone reacts to the unfolding debt debate in Washington and on Squawk Box. Stay tuned. We'll be back with you.